and I watched them, and like I would watch them over and over and over again, and it was a new obsession. I had this thing where I would become obsessed with whatever, anything that was remotely interesting to me. If I found it interesting enough, I would dive into it head first, and I would learn everything there is to learn about it. And right now, the closest thing to that I have, well, I mean, it kind of depends. Like I've developed an affinity for learning a lot of things about a lot of stuff over the years. Um, like I know a lot of stuff about Doctor Who. Not everything. The problem with that, learning about that, is that it goes back so far, and you have to account for all the different canon archetypes and all the different mediums that it's been published on. It's just it's insane. So I know Doctor Who, I know the new stuff, I know some of the stuff from the past, enough to get by. Again, tangent, but like between all those obsessions, it was stuff like Doctor Who, Back to the Future, and Weird Al, and those were all the things. Like even today, like I know so many things about. So at that point, it was Back to the Future. Back to the Future was something that I dedicated my learning attention span to. So I knew everything about the trilogy, not so much about the cartoon series, because the cartoon series was kind of and they weren't even voiced by the same people. So it was kind of it wasn't like the worst thing in the world, but it wasn't great. It was obviously marketed towards kids, and that kind of did not appeal to me, even though I was young at the time. So so there's that. Back to the Future. It was just so interesting to me. Like time travel as a concept. It was like I don't think that I knew much about time travel at the time, if anything. I didn't realize that it was a viable source of sci-fi or any type of literature or storytelling. But I got introduced to this idea that you could go back in time, make a change, and it would cause some insane chain reaction to where the present might be completely unrecognizable to you. And I loved that. Traveling to the future was okay, but it was just so interesting to go back into the past, something that you knew enough about that you understood how certain things worked, but when you got there, knowing is a whole different thing from experiencing. And I was like, that is so cool. The idea that you would be able to go back and see something that you would never be able to see, and do things that you'd never be able to do, and that they would have consequences, even if they were small. You'd be like, there were so many possibilities of time travel that I was just so interested in. And so I started vibing on that very heavily in my work. And I started working on a series without a title, and at first that title became The Perils of Time Travel. It was meant to be like the title's very negative on time travel, which was funny to me because it was so cool to me. Like if I had a time machine, I wouldn't call any of the negatives out. I mean, I'd probably hold myself up in whatever time period I liked and just stay there for who knows how long until I got bored. That's me. But the title was originally very negative on the concept because I had this idea where these two teenagers would go back in time, screw a bunch of stuff up, and then it would just like completely snowball. But then I was thinking, I was like, I mean, the consequences were one thing, but the adventures were another. The everyone ventures into the concept of a changed future, but they never dwell on the experience of going back or staying somewhere or doing anything. Like it was all about doing something in the past and then coming to the present. But I wasn't satisfied with just that. I was thinking they don't spend enough time actually time traveling in any given story. they go back and maybe they spend a reasonable amount of time there, but then they just go back to the present, and then it's over. And I mean, granted, that's probably what a lot of people's actual experience with time travel would be. Like, you wouldn't want to constantly be bouncing around unless you were me. So I was thinking, I need something that drags them around, that takes them so that they are not just doing one thing. And the problem was that I had to find a narrative point that would keep them time traveling without them stopping. And that proved to be very difficult. So it was called The Perils of Time Travel because they were constantly being dragged through time. It wasn't that they were doing it by choice, because as fun as choice is, it doesn't introduce a very good conflict for the story. Because if you're time traveling by choice, all of your peril happens in the past. But how do you create conflict if you have a time machine? If you have a time machine and you use it by choice, then you are able to return at any given moment that you want. You are not beholden by it. The Back to the Future worked because of the plutonium. The first Back to the Future worked because they were stuck with plutonium, and they only had enough for one trip. So Marty was stuck in 1955 because they couldn't find the plutonium. They didn't have it. So that was the conundrum. He couldn't just go back to the future. There's your title. Because he didn't have the resources to do it. So the whole conflict revolves around him getting something so that he can go back to the future. And then the secondary conflict was the fact that he threw a wrench in his parents' meeting. So that kind of writing is wonderful because it introduces multiple concepts that are hurdled, that keep him engaged there. And that's all well and good, but I was thinking, instead of just having one time period at the one point, I could extend it into a whole series of narratives where there's a reason that they go to all these places, and sometimes, and most of the time, it's not even within their control. And the idea was that they're just trying to get home, but all these different hurdles keep popping up. And there's different reasons. Maybe the time machine doesn't work, which happens a couple of times, or maybe they need to fix something because someone else was already back there and they screwed something up. Or, like, it would just be stuff like that. Or maybe they wanted to stay back for a different reason. Maybe they saw something that they wanted to live for back in the past, and they just decided that maybe they wanted to try staying there. And it was all these concepts that I was coming up with, and I was like, they have to have a reason to go here. They have to have a reason to go here. All the time periods that I could think of that I was interested in learning about and writing about, I had to find a way to draw that in. So that is what I did. I would look up all these different things. I've learned so much about different time periods and all the different, like, machines and things that people have made over the years and how technology has evolved in the past, like, 200 years. It's just like, it just took an insane amount of research to the extent that I didn't even know I would be getting into. And it just completely snowballed into this other thing. And I couldn't have been happier with that. But, yeah, so I mean, that's kind of what happened. And I think that's what I wanted to go over in this video. So yeah, there's that. That's like the infancy of the idea where I came up with Time Toss up to the point where I was trying to define how I wanted to write it. I'm not sure exactly how I want to continue. I think I want to keep doing these videos. I know they're long because I'm looking at the thing and it's about 25 minutes long, and that's a long time to be talking. But I have a lot to say about my work. So in this video, I covered sort of like the idea behind Time Toss and how I started writing up to the point where I discovered how I wanted to write it. I might get more into the specifics in the future where we talk about, like, the different time periods that I actually wanted to explore, the different relationship dynamics. There's a lot to talk about, and I love that. I can't believe it took me this long to discover that there's so many different aspects of this that I could be talking about on YouTube about things that I'm actually interested in, and that's cool. So I think I want to keep doing this, where I just talk about my writing and all the different stuff that comes with it. So expect more of these videos in the future when I have the time. We will definitely do that. If you're wondering about the elephant that is the room, you probably noticed that there's like some random stuff in the background, like maybe clothes or something else weird. And the answer to that is like, why? Well, the question is like, what is the deal with everything in the background? And I'm telling you that I am in an office that is not mine. I'm using the office to do stuff that is mine. But all that stuff back there, all this ridiculous stuff that you might not even be able to see, it's not mine. It's this is someone else's office, but I'm using it because I have nowhere else to work. I will be moving into my own place very soon. It'll be very nice. Oh my gosh, I'm excited about that. But in the meantime, I'll probably be using this office to do stuff. So yeah, we'll be checking in later and doing more things. So, thanks for joining me.